And look at that. We are live. Now we are doing something. We're getting things together, everybody. Thanks for joining us, everyone. It's the pre-show. We have about 7 minutes before we go live for today's A-plus study group. It's our Core 1 A-plus study group. Most specifically, you know what I don't have up is my extra tab here. Bring this tab over here, and let's get your Vevox running, shall we? My session has expired. Now, do I have things up here? I sure do. Things are working. I'm just rolling through, getting things ready to go here. Hope everybody's doing well. It's the last month of the year. I can't believe it. Let's see. A-plus study group is right here. Let's start this. How about that? Yes. I'm clicking things on my side. You just can't see it. I'm getting there, everybody. We're making it happen. Let's get our circle up. Very nice. And there we go. Works great. How's everybody doing? Hello, chat room. Nice to see you. I'm checking you guys out over here, saying hello. We've got a lot of brand new questions for A+ to do today. Looking forward to that. Super bright. Let's bring it down some. There we go. Malkay, glad you're here a little early. I'm here late. So between both of us, we figured it out, I think. Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. There's a lot that I am either behind doing. It's when you don't do one in a while. You've not worked on a live stream in a while. Why is it flashing like a crazy thing there? What is that about? Something is not quite right. See the flashing red light? Flashing red lights are bad. Bad flashing red light. Let's stop that recording. Is that on the A or B side? That is on the B side. Why didn't I keep B side? Let's see. Did it stop? Let's see if it stops. That stopped. That's restarted. And it's now solid red, which is what it's supposed to be. So I don't know what was going on there. It's time for me to refer to the manual for additional troubleshooting hints and tips. I'm someone who should read the manual. 5-minute warning. Look at that. I guess we should go through our checklist and see if we really do have everything ready to go. You get the email notification just now. That worked. SSD, yep, that's running. We did the intro earlier. Graphics are in here. We just tried those. Those work fabulous. I have my books ready. We've got exam objectives also available for later. I think we're in pretty good shape. The Vevox is now up and running. It's the little things, isn't it? So we'll get that all going today. A lot to go through. I'll go back to the stream. Back. That's not what I wanted. Go back to my list of, and now I've gone to the wrong page. We'll make it happen, everybody. Let's go to that page. Makes such a difference when we are making that happen. It says excellent. Excellent. And this is now old. We can get rid of that window. We can pop this window out. Pop it open. There we go. Works fine. Oh boy. There is, let's do a quick check of my camera was hit. I feel like I'm over just a little bit too far this way. But that means I have to sort of sit here the whole time. That's not going to work for me. So I need to go just a tad towards the yellow. Just a wee bit. Just a hint. Let's do that. Since we've only got 3 minutes before we're live, it's a perfect time to start changing cameras. What happened there? We're going to go. Let's see. Now is not the time to be doing this, but that worked. That was fine. Now my earpiece needs to go back in. Okay. One of these days, I will get with the program. It will not be today. We'll figure it out. We are getting there. I'm getting over a cold, so I will be pausing quite a bit in the middle of this and then trying to avoid any odd noises, my coughing and the nonsense. We'll get there. Okay, 2 minutes to go. We'll start our Core 1 A+ study group in just a moment. There's a lot here. Woo. I'm also trying to add other pieces to this during the holiday season. I thought, the holiday season, that'd be a perfect time to do this. Worst time. Horrible time to make changes. That's not the time. Your head's not in it. You're sort of figuring it out. You're not really going to know if it worked until January. That kind of thing. All right, minute and a half. We'll get things started. Everything looks like it is working, but is it? There, it's flashing red again. You see that? We were doing fine. I don't know what it's doing. It must be dropping some frames. So we'll worry about that afterwards. See how it goes. There's always something. Maybe time for some adjustments, some changes. We need to modify. We need to troubleshoot. That'll be something I get to do this afternoon. We'll go through all of that. Okay, next up is us starting the live stream. I think I've got everything in order over here. Too many wires. There are always too many wires. Need to work that one up. But are there really? Do we need more wires? Maybe. It's one of those challenges. You want that functionality, but you don't want all the wires with the functionality. And wireless doesn't work that great sometimes. So I just think it's one of those where it's the cost of doing business, as they say. It's the nature of the beast, as they say. We'll figure out all of those details. Okay, 10 seconds to go. At this point, we're locked in, aren't we? We will figure out what the next step is. Top of the hour. That means we can close that. We can go to our keynote. We can look for a green light. Do we get a green light? We sure do. There it is. We don't need to look at the ring. I need to look at my... Thank you for the random notification, Mr. iPad. Come on. And now, of course. Now our green light isn't showing up. It worked fine for a moment. We'll figure it out, everyone. It's always the network, isn't it? There we go. Have you turned it off and back on again? It's sort of the mantra of this study group, isn't it? Let's do a live stream, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the December 2025 Professor Messer 220-1201. That is our Core 1 A+ study group. We're coming to you live from our studios so that we can give you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are here watching live, you can participate with us. We would love to have you join along with what we're doing here and see if you happen to know what these answers might be. And then we'll see what everybody's answers happen to be as well. So we got a lot of really interesting things to go through today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you are watching us on the replay, you can still participate there as well. We'll be glad to have you join in. Just remember all of those. We've got a lot to go through here. The summary of the things that we will be doing can all go back to one single URL. That is the one we have here, professormesser.com/QA. That is the URL you need. Pop open a new browser window, head over to that URL. That's where you will be answering questions, putting your comments in, and adding questions for the after show. That is something you can all do from that single URL. Once you go to that URL, there will be a question waiting for you. We refer to this question as our rewind question because it is a question that comes to us from a previous study group. And that is the thing that I think we will focus on today. Now, after doing all of this, after going live, some of you were here live as we were stepping through this and trying to get all of the things to work in here. We finally managed to make that happen. And here we are at this weird view of the world that popped up on the screen, the different things that we have here. We've got all of these rolling in the right place. Our keynote has failed. It's the best possible situation. So let's do a live stream, everybody. Here is our rewind question of the day. Hopefully we'll be able to bring this to you eventually. There it is. The question asks, which of the following would be considered a private IP address? As many of you know, this is a question we did in a previous study group. And the thing about these questions of what would be considered a private IP address, I think I even mentioned in the previous study group, let's not do this question again. So, of course, what are we doing? We're doing this question again. We're making it happen. What you want to do is pop open a new browser window, head over to that URL, professormesser.com/QA, and there will be a question waiting for you. That question asks, which of the following would be considered a private IP address? And I have some options there for you. Our rule in the chat room, our rule for the live stream in general is please no answers in the chat room, please no hints in the chat room. Our question asks, which of the following would be considered a private IP address? Is it 1.252.16.22? Is it 168.201.52.16? Is it 192.169.112.14? Is it 224.16.77.25? Or is it 172.27.254.160? Now you can start to see why I said I would never do this question again. Because you have to put all of the numbers in there. If you want to reference where those numbers are coming from, what that's referring to, there's the URL you want to go to. Go to professormesser.com/QA to see the question, see the answers, and choose the correct answer. We will be coming back to this question in just a bit. So stand by for what the answer will eventually be. In the meantime, you can always submit your question at any time. Thank you so much for being here. We do one of these study groups for our Core 1A+, Core 2A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus every month. We have a study group for each one of those. This is our first of the month. So we have 3 more this month to go through. There's a lot that we have to step through and make these different live streams happen. Of course, if you are looking for us when we are not doing a live stream, you can find us over at professormesser.com. And from there, we have links to all of our social media sites like professormesser.com/YouTube, /X, /Instagram, /Discord, /LinkedIn, /Facebook, and many others. Simply find those by going to professormesser.com, and you'll see all of the links in the upper right-hand side of the website. Sometime in this first hour, I will give you instructions on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. If you have no idea what a 1-hour webinar category CEU happens to be, then you probably don't need one. But if you are planning to take your existing certification and renew that certification by collecting continuing education units, just listen in during the first hour. I will give you instructions on how you can earn an email from me that has that certificate of attendance inside of it. We will be talking today about the 220-1201 exam. This is also referred to on the CompTIA website as version 15 of the A+ certification. It was released in March of this year, so relatively young for the certifications that we tend to see. By relatively young, I mean that this certification will probably be around till somewhere around September of 2028. So if you're looking to take your A+ certification, you are in the right place using the right one that you see here. The exam itself is 90 minutes in length. If you're taking the 1201, it's on a scale from 100 to 900. You need to earn a 675. And if you're taking the 1202, which we will do also this week, you need to get a 700 to pass that exam. And once you pass, your certification is good for 3 years. So you don't have to worry so much about the retirement information once you are already certified. You're on a completely different calendar with completely different worries ahead of you for renewal. Also let you know that sometime in the next day or so, you'll notice that the YouTube video description has changed a bit. You'll see currently there are no timestamps because we haven't done the YouTube video yet. This is it. As we are stepping through, we will have my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's going through this at 2x speed and putting in all of the timestamps for everything we do today. Just another quick way to help you find exactly what you're looking for is in the YouTube video descriptions. If this is something you think that you might use or you have used these in the past, give Lori a thanks and a hello in the chat room. She's also watching the chat room replay go by at the same time. Also let you know that We are not only doing these live streams, we're not only in all of those other social media sites, but we have a Discord that I'm usually at 24/7, it seems. That's right. I never sleep. I'm always in the Discord. You'll find at least somebody in the Discord. There's constant activity going on because thousands of people are in our Discord studying to get their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. Find out more about this by visiting our Discord. Join us at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take the A+ certification. And one of the things that you will often run into with the A+ certification is that you have to pay to take the exam. That's one of the things that you normally do with any IT industry exam. If you are in the US or Canada, I can give you a discount over what the prices might be on the CompTIA website. It's the same vouchers from the CompTIA website, but you don't pay as much because you happen to know me. And I can give you and offer you those discounts on the vouchers. You'll find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. Also have a little bonus that I give you. Not only are you paying less, you get more because I will give you a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook containing tips and tricks that I've accumulated and compiled into this through the years. It's an ebook that I wrote specifically for these exams. So this is something you can't purchase from my site. It is only available in a success bundle or if you purchase a voucher. It's a great way to save some money and support the things that we're doing here. Find out more about that at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to the question I asked earlier. Which of the following would be considered a private IP address? So let's have a look at what we believe that answer to be. If we step through these, clicking a few things on my side to get my private IP address information up and running, the possible answers were 1.252.16.22, 168.201.52.16, 192.169.112.14, 224.16.77.25, and lastly, 172.27.254.160. Got to tell you, I'm going to be happy to retire this question. The answers are, if we stop our poll, we're not really sure. There's quite a bit happening there as we go through this question. You can see, in fact, that we have 44% of you say the answer is 172.27.254.160. 32% of you say the answer is 192.169.112.14. We have double digits. 15% of you say the answer is 168.201.52.16. And then you have single digits for the last two. See, I got out of saying the numbers for at least for the last two of those. So that is a benefit. So which one is the right answer? Let's disclose what the right answer is. It's the one that the plurality of you chose. 44% of you say the answer is 172.27.254.160. Well, the question was about private IP addresses. And although I put the entire IP address on the screen, I think a lot of us know that you really only need to look at the first and in some cases the second octet to be able to understand what a private address is. The way that I look at it is by looking at the private address list that I have in my course. This is directly from my video, the 220.12.01 video 2.6, which is entitled IPv4 and IPv6. You can see that the IP address range of 10.0.0.0 through 10.255.255.255. This is one where we have all of those would be private, everything in that range. There's another range, 172.16.0.0 through 172.31.255.255. And a third private IP address range is 192.168.0.0 through 192.168.255.255. Now, the one that we chose was one that was in this middle range, 172.16 through 172.31, almost to 32. 172.16 through 172.31. If we looked at that range, we can see it's 172.27. So that is why that particular address is a private IP address. The one dot address that we have at the top is a public IP address. That is not a private address. 168, we started off good. 168, except that doesn't really correlate back to anything else, does it? So that's also a public IP address. 192.169 See, we're throwing in all of these 192.168.169. 192.168 would have been a private IP address, but that's not what we have here. 192.169. And then a 224 address, that is one that shows up as a multicast. So it's not a address that would be considered a private IP address. That's a multicast IP address. The only one in this big list that indeed fits this list of private IP addresses is the one that starts with 172.27. So you can see that it fits right into that category. I know this is a big chart. If you had to memorize the stuff that's on this chart, I would really only worry about this first column. That's the one you need to know for the exam. Everything else is some supplemental information to help give you some context. But what you really need to know is that information in that very first column. The reason that these are private IP addresses is because we carved them out specifically to be private. And if you wanted to look at how we carved those out, it is published in a standard known as a request for comments, RFC. And the specific RFC that you would look for is RFC 1918. That is the one where we determined that these specific IP addresses will not be used on the internet. We will not route them on the internet. If you put traffic onto the internet with these IP addresses, they would all be dropped immediately because they are not public IP addresses. They are private IP addresses. And those of you that answered 172.27.254.160 got it absolutely correct. Well done. Okay, that was our rewind question of the month. That's the only one that we have this month that is a question you might have seen before. All of the other questions that we do in this study group will all be brand new questions. I write them new for every single study group. So the first new question of every study group, I like to do a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are questions that are effectively anything but multiple choice. The question we just did was a multiple choice question. There was a question, there were five answers to choose from, which means you could have taken a guess, and if you guessed correctly, you get the points, which means you had a 20% chance of getting this question right if you didn't know anything, if you just took a guess, which is free points on an exam. Well, CompTIA realizes this and thinks, let's make the questions just a little bit harder. Ones that you can't guess at to get free points. You really need to know the content. And so the first handful of questions you get on your exam will not be multiple choice questions. They will be performance-based questions. Performance-based questions are anything other than multiple choice. These might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt. It could be a drag and drop question. They might have you put things in a particular order. They might have you move things around the screen. There are a lot of things that are focused on those types of things. So if you are interested in a performance-based question, I have one for you today. This one is a fill-in-the-blank question, although CompTIA doesn't tend to give you fill-in-the-blank questions on their exam. They tend to give you things that you can drag and drop, but we at least have something we can work with today's performance-based question. Can't really see the question there because of a big head. It's on the screen. What are these interfaces used for? What you're seeing on the screen, for those of you listening in on the podcast, you are seeing a motherboard. On this motherboard, we have listed put five different arrows on the screen. Those 5 different arrows are pointing to different components on the screen. So I want you to tell me what you think those 5 different items are. If you think you know the answer, you need to go to the URL, which now is in a bad place, professormesser.com/QA, to be able to put those down. Hopefully these are components that you are familiar with. If you are familiar, you've put together a motherboard, you've spec'd out a motherboard, maybe you've looked at a number of motherboards online. This is a really good example of how you should be able to look at a motherboard and pick out what those different components might be. If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer by putting it in at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. Got a lot to do there. As always, of course, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. It's kind of the standing rule that we have in our study group is you may not answer in the chat room, or please don't answer in the chat room. I guess you could it will only serve to result in a lot of angst, anxiety, and ultimately a lot of bad feelings. And we don't want bad feelings. We want good feelings. So avoid putting it in the chat room. Keep the vibe all positive. Go to professormesser.com/QA. There it is, to lock in what you think the answers are. I don't want to leave it up on the screen because obviously we have those 5 things there that we would work through. Let me see if I can, now that we know what the question is, now that we think we know what the question is, let me see if I can put myself back up here. I can. Hey, there I am. There we go. Now we know what to work through for these questions. See if you happen to know what they are. You can always put the answers in professormesser.com/QA. I could probably move this down, right? Let's move it down. Let's see if I can move this over. There we go. Boy, could I have it a little larger on the screen? That would be great. That would be fantastic. We could do that just all in real time. There we go. Now we can see it. Now I'm there, and now I won't worry about that in my mind anymore. We're in good shape. Put your questions in. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in this question. Let's step through all 5 of these. See what I think they are. See what you think they are. We'll be able to step through all of them. Let's start with the very first one that we have. Of course, now that I'm on the separate tab, now it comes over here. Number 1 on our list is this arrow that's pointing over to what appears to be this long type of slot. That is an expansion slot. It's a PCI Express slot specifically. I'll accept expansion card slot. I'll accept an expansion card, a PCI Express slot, a PCI Express interface. You can put anything along those lines. That's where you would plug in additional accessories. This is the beauty of the personal computer. When they finally designed personal computers for consumers, IBM was smart enough to create standardized slots so that individuals could customize their computer with specific features that would not normally come with the device. So those expansion cards, although we're using fewer and fewer of them these days, it seems, there are still places where a high-speed expansion really makes a lot of sense. Graphics cards, for example, might fit into an expansion card like that. If you need an external high-end gaming or graphics-intensive card, that works perfect. Number 2 on our list is this arrow that's pointing over to this square-looking thing that is kind of in the middle of the motherboard. It looks like it has some silver around it. That is a big component relative to everything else on the motherboard, and that's where our central processing unit connects, our CPU. Normally, you don't see that because it has a heatsink on top of it, and then there's usually a fan on top of that, and so there's a lot there that you would need to be able to take off just to see the CPU. If you've ever built your computer, you know about that process. You put the CPU in, you lock it in place, you put a bit of some thermal paste on the top, you put a heatsink on top of that, then you put a fan on top of that. Why do you go through such a process to stack all these things on top of the CPU? Because the CPU gets really, really hot. Very, 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 very hot. Do not touch a CPU. If you've just turned off this computer, do not touch that CPU. Very, very hot. So the way that we get rid of all that heat is we pull it out of the heatsink and use either air or liquid to be able to dissipate that heat. Makes a lot of sense if you're someone. Let's look at number 3. Number 3 is pointing to these 4. They look a lot like the expansion cards that we see in the other part of the motherboard, but they're a little thinner, a little bit smaller, but they still take up a lot of room on this particular motherboard. The way that what we would be plugging into those interfaces are the memory modules on the system, the random access memory. So if you chose memory modules, you selected RAM, you put in memory, it's all the same thing. Maybe you have DIMMs is what you put in this. That would accept that as well. That would fit into this view. So we would add our memory into these memory sticks. And although it's difficult to see in this particular view, the reason we have the memory so close to the CPU is these 2 devices are constantly sending information back and forth. Probably the most amount, by far, the most amount of traffic of activity of data transferred in this motherboard is between the CPU and the memory. So one of the things you'll always notice on the motherboard is they're very close to each other physically. Now, the reason for that is we want that information to move as fast as possible. The farther away you put them, the harder it is to transmit that data. You have to have a stronger signal to be able to send that across. We don't want that. We want to use less power to be able to send those, and we want it to go very quickly, so you put them close to each other. So your memory goes into those memory slots that you could see listed as number 3. Number 4 is pointing to a device or a component that's right next to the memory slots. This one is this 24-pin interface, a relatively blocky interface that's used for the power. The main power coming directly from your power supply is plugging in with a 24-pin connector right to that section of the motherboard. That is where you would plug in and have all of your power coming in that powers almost everything on the motherboard. Ideally, it powers everything on the motherboard, but there might be other components. There might be CPUs that need some additional power. There might be expansion cards that need additional power. And in those cases, there might be additional interfaces on the motherboard itself for power. You can see one here at the top. There might be other power interfaces on the expansion cards themselves. So occasionally, you need some additional power. That also comes directly from the power supply, but instead of plugging into this 24-pin connector, it is a separate power connection that plugs directly into that component. But whenever you see that 24-pin connector, that is the power for your motherboard. And lastly, as you can see, I chose number 5 is these connections on the side. These are SATA connections. These would plug directly into your storage devices. Of course, if you have an M.2 drive, we do have an M.2 interface on this motherboard. I didn't put an arrow to that. Let's zoom up on it a little bit. There it is. It's the back end of the M.2 drive. You would plug it in on the other side of that connector. And I bet if we look here, there's the screw where you would screw down that M.2 interface. And that's how you know that you're plugged in and working all of those. That is where we have these 5 different devices, components on the motherboard. You have an expansion card here in the upper side. You've got a CPU that you would plug in. We have slots available for your memory or your random access memory. These would be DIMM slots on this motherboard. We have power connectors, your 24-pin main power for the motherboard, and your storage drives. On these SATA connectors, I could have also had a separate arrow pointing over to the M.2 connector, although M.2 can be used for many things. I think these days, mostly we are using it for storage drives themselves. There are other components you might want to think about on this motherboard. There's the battery. The battery is huge compared to, as the motherboards are getting smaller, the batteries seem to be getting larger. They're the same size, of course. That battery is used to maintain the date and the time on the motherboard when you disconnect it from main power. And there's a lot of other components, very interesting on this motherboard. If you've never watched people troubleshoot and fix problems at a component level on a motherboard, it is fascinating. Before our exam, we don't have to get down to that level. We simply need to be able to select and view the motherboard and see what these are. If you'd like to try this for yourself, by the way, you can certainly go to Google and ask it to do an image search of a motherboard, not an AI motherboard. You have to turn off AI if you want to do anything relating to an IT certification exam. So turn off anything AI related, have it show you a real motherboard. And on that real motherboard, you should be able to pick out those components. Well, another thing you might want to do is get the model number of that motherboard. And if you go to the manual of the motherboard, they usually have a block diagram explaining what all of those different components are that probably go well beyond those 5 devices that you see here. So this might be something useful for your studies. If you want a little bit of refresh, you want to look at a different kind of motherboard, you want to see what those different options are, this might be a good one to step through. Those of you that submitted your answers, I looked at a number of these come through. They're not compiled because it's kind of a free open text-based entry for these, but most of you did really, really, really good with these components. So you're on the right track, you're learning the right thing, and this information might be really helpful for you once you get to the exam. Well done with the question that we had there. So much to step through for our performance-based questions, but you guys did pretty well. So I think we should continue on to our next question. This is not a performance-based question, but it is a question that is a multiple choice question, and it asks, a user's Windows laptop shows the message, no internet access. Once you come out of the problems of looking at a screen that says no internet access, you're stunned. You're trying to figure out what to do next. The question is, which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be your Windows login credentials are incorrect? We have high jitter values. There's an incorrect BIOS password. The Windows firewall is enabled, or an API-PA address is assigned. Quite a few things to work through here. The question again asks, a user's Windows laptop shows the message, no internet access. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this issue? Would it be Windows login credentials are incorrect, high jitter values, incorrect BIOS password, Windows firewall is enabled, or the API-PA address is assigned? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. This is one where each one of these are bad, right? Or most of these tend to be bad or could cause problems. I don't know if bad is the right word, but it could maybe cause problems with the things you're doing. Some of these answers would not cause a problem at all, wouldn't be an issue. So that's one of those situations where you might choose something and it might not be bad in this particular view. Again, if you think you know the answer, you can lock in your answer with the URL on your screen. Please go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. The question again was, a user's Windows laptop shows the message, no internet access. Which of the following would be the most likely reason? Let's see what you chose for this one. Is it Windows login credentials are incorrect, high jitter values, incorrect BIOS password, Windows firewall is enabled, or an API-PA address is assigned? Big numbers on this one. A very large number of you have chosen API-PA address is assigned. 18% of you, though, said a Windows firewall is enabled. There's your problem. And then it's single digits. 4% of you said Windows login credentials are incorrect. 4% said it's high jitter values. 1% said an incorrect BIOS password. Well, you probably have seen this before. This is something that you would find in the system tray of your Windows. A little alert pops up, and then it says that you have no connectivity to the internet, or there's limited access, or it simply says no internet access, depending on what the problem happens to be. Now, one of the things that is useful, especially if you've just turned on this computer and you're seeing this message, it's very possible that it's you, that it's your device that's having this issue. It may not be a global internet outage, or at least an outage for your particular network. It's probably something related to the IP address. That may be the first place to go if you're trying to confirm that this device has the proper connectivity. What IP address does it have? What is its subnet mask? What is the default gateway? And then you can start pinging through the network to try to find out where the problem is. If you get an API-PA address, this is an automatic IP address assignment. This is one that this automatic private IP address, and private is the one that is the big problem. Private addresses mean that you can at least communicate on your local subnet, but you cannot communicate outside of your local IP subnet. And by definition, the internet is outside of your local IP subnet. The internet connectivity will not be available to you if your DHCP server is down and you've been simply assigned an automatic private IP address. If you don't know about API-IP addresses, we do talk about API-PA addresses in our course. That would be another good thing to look at. If that doesn't not recognize to you, that would be a great place to go to figure out what that might be. Now, of course, other things can cause this as well. There might be a problem with your local gateway, your local router. So your router may be the thing that is limiting your access to the internet. It might be your local enterprise firewall. It might be a router somewhere else inside of your network that has nothing to do with your laptop. But none of those were possible answers. The only one of these answers that makes any sense for this particular symptom is the one that 73% of you chose. The automatic private IP address has been assigned to this particular laptop. We also have these other questions. 18% of you, for example, said the Windows firewall is enabled. The Windows firewall is there to prevent inbound access to your system. The Windows firewall, by default, will not limit your outbound access to the internet, and it would not show you no internet access. It would simply prevent any type of communication. Firewalls are very quiet. They do all of their work in the background. You don't even know they're there. And if something isn't getting through, it doesn't tell you why it's not getting through. It doesn't say, hi, I'm a firewall. I'm blocking everything you're sending. It doesn't do that. It just blocks it. And you never know. You have to find the firewall person to look at their logs and tell you, is it the firewall causing this or not? Hopefully that's you. Makes the process so much simpler. 4% of you said the Windows login credentials are incorrect. If that was the case, we would never probably get to the point where we would see a no internet access. I guess it could pop up on the login screen, couldn't it? But not putting in the correct login credentials are not going to prevent you from accessing the internet, at least not the Windows login credentials. High jitter values are associated with the inner packet times. So as packets are coming into your system, and normally these packets are arriving in a very standard amount of time. But if there are large gaps between those packets, we refer to those gaps, or at least the measurement of those gaps, as jitter. And if your jitter values begin to increase, that means it's taking longer and longer to get these packets brought into your system. So you want jitter values that are relatively small, not jitter values that are high. But in either case, jitter is not going to cause a problem such as no internet access. It might be really bad internet access. It might be this internet access is slower than I expected, but it would not be no internet access. And then an incorrect BIOS password, I guess it would depend what type of BIOS password we are talking about here. BIOS passwords are commonly used to either prevent a system from booting or prevent anyone from changing the things that are already configured in the BIOS, the settings that we already have. So an incorrect BIOS password, if it's a boot password, you're not even into your system. Windows hasn't even started, so you would not have a message showing no internet access. And then if it was a configuration password, you're never seeing that anyway. The configuration password for your BIOS has nothing to do with your internet access. So in this particular case, the only one of these answers that makes any sense is the one that 73% of you chose. Your automatic private IP address is assigned to the system, which means that we are not able to communicate outside of our local subnet. Well done. You guys did great with that particular question. Let's do another one, shall we? We'll keep going through our list. The next multiple choice question I have for you is an acronym question. It is a question that asks, a company's IT policy states mobile devices are COPE. Which of the following would apply? Would it be that backups are the user's responsibility? Is it that the organization owns the phone? Is it that all applications are cloud-based? Is it that two-factor authentication is required? Or is it that the employees are using their own phone? So here is where we need to find the right answer. If you think you know the right answer, please go to the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this happens to be. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Some people are asking if APIPA is an enterprise implementation of DHCP. No, an enterprise implementation of DHCP is called DHCP. It's not any different in the enterprise than it is at home, amazingly. A lot of the technologies we use in the enterprise are the same technologies we're using in our house. The same Ethernet, the same DHCP, the same routing, the same things that we always tend to do. APIPA is a fallback when we don't have DHCP. When we don't have an IP address assigned to that device, the automatic private IP addressing kicks in and allows you to at least communicate on your local subnet. It doesn't allow you to route outside your subnet, but sometimes that can give you enough connectivity to troubleshoot and at least connect to other devices that are also on your local subnet. So it's not DHCP, it's what you get when there isn't DHCP. It's a lack of DHCP in many cases, but it doesn't have to work that way. Now, I have seen organizations that have manually assigned APIPA addresses to devices, which, by the way, is outside the specification. The specification says You cannot assign these to your systems. We assigned it. It's an automatic IP address. So you can't even use those IP addresses, or you're not supposed to. I guess you can, but it's sort of a bad idea. And certainly the specification, the standard states that you are not supposed to add addresses to a device manually with that particular range. You should be using the automatic method and not have to worry about the others. So let's go back to the question. Now let's go to this question, and it asks, a company's IT policy states mobile devices are COPE. Which of the following would apply? Are backups the user's responsibility? Is it that the organization owns the phone? Is it that all applications are cloud-based? Is it that two-factor authentication is required? Or is it that the employees use their own phone? So we've got a few choices. What did you choose? I'd like to know. Let's stop the poll and see if you know what the answer is. 70% of you, another big number, says the organization owns the phone. So this is one where if you're ever in the getting a new job or you're working in an organization and they handle everything associated with the phone, it's their phone, they manage it, all they do is hand you this new phone when you walk in the door, we refer to that as COPE, which is a corporately owned but personally enabled device. I feel like we had to shoehorn that one in a little bit. I'm not sure that the acronym really worked well. Somebody said COPE would be a good one. What words could we put with COPE? So it's a backronym. Corporate owned, personally enabled. So the company's bought the device. You don't own it, but you get to use it like a personal device, which is nice too. So there's an expense you don't have to worry about from that perspective. That's one where the organization not only owns the device, they have complete control over the device. Sometimes this is just a preference by the organization. But in other cases, it's one where the organization is mandated to have that level of control over those devices. Perhaps not directly, but effectively mandated to not allow third-party devices on their network. So check your corporate policies. It may be that you can use your personal phone. Maybe you have to connect your personal phone to the mobile device manager or MDM, or maybe the company just gives you a phone. That avoids the whole thing. In that case, you could have a corporate phone and you could keep your personal phone. They could actually be separate entities, separate devices. You have to carry around two devices, but in some cases that may be preferable just to keep the work stuff on the work phone, the home stuff on the home phone, which is actually not a bad idea. I think that may be a good way to do it. Sometimes the organization will let you pick the device from a list. So they make it at least a little bit better. They're not force a single phone on you. They'll say you could use that one, that one, that one, or that one. Which one would you like? Oh, you like the third one? Here you go. There's your phone. It's still under their control. They're still the ones that bought it, but you often see that referred to as choose your own device or CYOD. It's exactly where we go. So in this case, the organization owning the phone, the corporately owned but personally enabled device is COPE. That's exactly what we were looking for here. It has nothing to do with backups. Nobody chose that option as being the user's responsibility. That's 0. 8% of you said two-factor authentication is required. It should be required. Certainly, you wouldn't want that required, but it's not anything to do with COPE. Just because it is a corporately owned device doesn't necessarily mean that it is also two-factor authentication. You could get two-factor authentication on a personally owned device, for example. 12% of you said the answer, or 12% and 11%, kind of a tie for that next to last place. All applications being cloud-based. Again, COPE has nothing to do with whether applications are in the cloud or applications are local on your device, so it would not be that answer. And 11% say the employees use their own phone. Again, the corporately owned is the CO in the COPE. In this case, it would not be the employee's phone that you would use for that. Although you may be working for an employer that allows you to use your own phone and bring it in. We do talk about all of these different who owns the phone, who doesn't own the phone, how do you manage these phones. It's all in my video in section 1.3, mobile device management. We talk all about COPE. We talk about privately owned phones. We talk about different ways to manage all of these in any of those scenarios. You might want to reference that, especially if you did not choose the answer that 70% of you chose, which is the organization owns the phone. You guys did really well with that one. Part of the problem with this exam, if there is a problem, is that there's a lot of information to learn. I guess that's a good thing. It is a very comprehensive exam to be able to take, not just for the Core 1, but also the Core 2. And if you were to look through my training videos, there are 137 videos that are in my course. That's a lot of videos, and I recommend you watch every single one of them multiple times. That's, of course, to be able to learn everything that's there. But you may find that you may have to skip a few of these, or maybe you just don't have enough time to go through all of these. So what I did was take every bit of information from every single one of my videos, and I put it into my set of course notes. Obviously, this isn't designed to replace the videos, but it's designed to give you something that you can look at as a summary of what you've already learned. So all of the text from my videos, they're in there. All of the important images are in the set of course notes. All the important tables and documents, the images, the charts, I tried to put everything into this list. So if you're trying to find a list of wireless network technology, frequency usage, it's in there. Let's flip ahead. If you want to see all of the different DNS configuration options and all the different records, if you want to look through and see what a DNS hierarchy looks like, they're in my course notes. Everything you need from that video, these notes have already been taken for you. They're right here in the course notes. This might be something that gives you everything in one single view, in one single document. Either is the PDF that we just saw, or you can purchase the physical edition, which is identical to what we were just looking at, but it's simply in a printed form. So there, for example, there's your DNS information in the book. It is a softback printed book. It is a bound book. This is professional, people. Nice color all the way through, and of course the nice glossy cover to have on there. We have these available for both Core 1 and Core 2. And if you buy both of them together, there's a little bit of a discount. You can get both the physical edition or the digital. If you end up getting the physical edition, you also get the digital PDF for free. You can download it immediately while you're waiting on this to arrive. If you want to learn more about that, it's on my website. Go to professormesser.com/1201notes. That might be something you might want to consider, not only to help yourself, but it also greatly helps us keep this entire amazing experience going. So we thank you for your support. And for those of you in the chat room have mentioned, oh, I already have the course notes. I've already used the course notes. These are great course notes. Thank you for your support already. You can find out more at professormesser.com/1201notes. More questions, people. Here we go. Next question on our list asks, a corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? Is this MAN, WAN, SAN, WLAN, PAN? Ooh, a lot to choose through there. A corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? Is it a MAN, a WAN, a SAN, a WLAN, a PAN? So this one's a little bit interesting in its layout. So we'll have to see which one you think this one might be and what the possible answers could be for something like this. If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you can, of course, have a look at the different options to submit your answer there. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You instead want to go to the links at the bottom of the screen there, professormesser.com/QA, to lock in your answer. This might be pretty good to be able on this corporate network to have 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which would best describe this network? We'll have to find out what you may be using for something like this. This might be, especially if you're in a corporate network already, maybe you have multiple buildings on this network. We'll have to find out what you think the answer is and be able to break this down. This might be a good one to also consider every answer that's in this particular question, because all of these answers come directly from the exam objectives. If you are looking at an abbreviation, an acronym that's on this list, and you don't immediately recognize the acronym, or you could not describe this acronym to someone else, this is exactly where you should make notes. Write down what those acronyms are so that you can reference those after the fact. Might be useful to go through. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a corporate network provides 802.11 connectivity between multiple buildings. Which of the following would best describe this network? Is it a MAN, a WAN, a SAN, a WLAN, or a PAN? Let's see what you think the answer is. We'll stop our poll, and not quite as strong an answer, but we did get a majority. 54% of you say the answer is WLAN. 25% of you, that is a pretty big number, for a quarter of you say the answer is a MAN. 18% of you say it's a WAN. And then we have 3% that said it's a PAN. 0% said it was a SAN. Wouldn't it be great if that was the answer? It'd be a SAN. We were, what? 0%? Well, in this case, it's not a SAN. The real important part of this question, there were two things on this question that were important. The first one is there were multiple buildings. Well, I guess that helps a little bit. We know that everything isn't within the same building. So there are multiple buildings. The other part that's important about this is 802.11. So it would be useful to know what that is so that you can then apply that towards where it would best fit. Now, 54% of you said the answer is WLAN, and 54% of you would be absolutely correct. Correct in this case, you would be correct, because WLAN stands for wireless LAN, and 802.11 is the IEEE standard naming conventions. That's the committee name for the wireless standard. WLAN, wireless LAN. So anytime you see 802.11, you're thinking that's a wireless network. That's exactly where we would go with that one. So if you're inside of a building, we've used these wireless networks. Everybody used an 802.11 network at this point. You can move around, but the 802.11 network has a limited coverage, especially to go between multiple buildings. You can't have two wireless networks that are connecting buildings that are miles apart from each other. 802.11 only goes so far. So these buildings must be relatively close to each other. They would be on a campus. Maybe this is a campus area network that we're working with here, except there was no campus area network in the list here. Probably because campus area network is no longer part of the A+ exam objective. So we don't have campus area network in this list. I don't think it's in there any longer. Trying to remember myself. It's a relatively new update to the standard. But the one that does apply that's in this list is our wireless local area network. Since 802.11 is wireless, that one is a good fit for what we were looking at here. But what about the others that are in this list? For example, we have 25% of you, a quarter of you said man, pal, mister, buddy. This MAN refers to a metropolitan area network. Generally, a metropolitan area network is a network where you are connecting to different remote sites that are in the same geographical area. You're in the same city. You're in the same metropolis, the same metropolitan area network. Usually, MAN, that term, is referring to connectivity that you're using. I guess you could have your own fiber in the ground. You could have your own dark fiber, as they say, and you're connecting with fiber. But most people don't have their own fiber in the ground because there's no way for you to put fiber in the ground between you and another location that's miles away. There'd be no way to do that. There's all these right-of-ways. You're not allowed to put fiber in the ground. You can't do it. Government agencies, however, do have rights and access to all of the ground itself. So very often you will find the government buildings that are located around your city may be connected to each other over a metropolitan area network. It could also be wireless if you have the ability, but generally wireless doesn't go very far. So if you go beyond a few miles, you're not going to be able to have that. And certainly for 802.11, you go outside the building and you no longer have access. 802.11 generally does not have the type of connectivity for everybody across a very broad area through very long distances. So metropolitan area network does not fit this particular description. 18% of you said a wide area network. Wide area networks are usually connections to remote sites that are outside of your local city. So it would be in the next county over, the next state over, the next country over, are wide area networks. So those are, the term wide, I guess, is relative, but it is one that describes a much farther distance than someone that's within your own city, generally speaking. We also have 3% of you that said PAN, that is a personal area network. The personal area networks are usually the devices we have that are local to us. We can actually touch them and see them on the here. So if you have a mobile phone, you probably have maybe some wireless earbuds that you use. Maybe you have a wireless speaker you connect to. All of those devices would be considered connectivity over a personal area network. So certainly to have that there. And then our last one that nobody chose was a storage area network. These are networks that are usually in your local network. They're in your building or usually in a very high-speed connection, and is one that is usually connecting you to storage devices. So that's why we call it a storage area network. So in this particular case, 802.11 connectivity, that's a very limited amount of connections between multiple buildings. In this case, we refer to those most specifically as a wireless local area network. The other options that we had here simply don't fit as well. And the question again asks, which of the following would best describe this network? The one that best describes 802.11 connectivity in general, regardless of whether it's between multiple buildings or not, is a wireless local area network, or WLAN. And 54% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question, shall we? Next on our list is this one that asks, a system administrator is connecting a display using analog video signals over a 15-pin connector. Which of the following would best describe this video? Would it be VGA, DisplayPort, Thunderbolt, HDMI, or USB-C? Isn't USB-C the answer to everything now? I thought it was. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is different. I just tends to be the one I choose for everything. If you think you know the answer, there you go. You've got the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. I'm going to take a sip here while we are waiting on your answers. I apologize. You've probably seen me hitting the mute button here every now and then. I'm getting over a bit of a cold, so as I'm trying to avoid talking very badly into the microphone, trying to keep it going here. We'll have to make sure that this all works out in this view. So hopefully this can give you a perspective of what we might want to choose for this question. The question again asks, a system administrator is connecting a display using analog video signals over a 15-pin connector. Which of the following would best describe this video? Is it VGA, DisplayPort, Thunderbolt, HDMI, or USB-C? I'll have to see if you chose that. Well, I'm interested now. I want to know, what did you choose? Let's close our poll. The curiosity is killing me. Big numbers on this one too, but is this one where we chose the wrong one and everybody went the wrong direction? We'll have to see if this happens to be the case of what we are looking for. And if you are someone who is stepping through these questions and trying to figure out where you would go to answer some of these, it's extremely important that you're able to look at an interface, look at the characteristics of the interface, and identify what that interface happens to be. Whatever it happens to be. There are many different kinds of interfaces you need to know for this exam. These are 5 of them that you need to know. You need to know what a VGA interface looks like. You need to know what a DisplayPort interface looks like. You need to know what a Thunderbolt interface physically looks like. Same thing for HDMI, although that one's probably pretty easy for most folks. And you need to understand what USB-C looks like. I think many of these we've seen before, but when you have someone describe to you over the phone, well, what are you looking at? Well, I'm looking at a 15-pin connector. Okay, that's our video connector. That must be, 85% of you say that must be VGA. 7% say that must be DisplayPort. 6% say that must be HDMI. 2% said Thunderbolt. And 1% said USB-C. So the answer that 85% of you gave was VGA. And if you're looking at a VGA connector, that is a 15-pin connector. It is using analog signals to be able to communicate, and that is one you should be able to recognize relatively easily. If you've not seen one recently, which is probably the case, here's what they look like. This is what a VGA connector looks like. Very similar to a serial connector. In fact, a serial connector The shell of the connector on a serial connector, a 9-pin connector, is exactly the same as the shell of a VGA 15-pin connector. So even though there's different number of pins on the inside, it is exactly the same type of shell. So that should look somewhat familiar in any case. These are often referred to as DB15 connectors. Technically, they are not. Technically, they are DE15 connectors. The letter D stands for what this looks like. It looks like a letter D. It's a D sub-interface. This D interface is one that can be small or it can be larger. And the different sizes of interfaces are given a letter, and that's the second letter that describes the size. A DB connector is a relatively longer connector. It's one that you might see often associated with 25-pin serial connections back in the day, if you ever run into one of those again. But they're kind of big. But they were one of the first ones that became very popular on a PC, so we thought they were just DB connectors. So when it went from DB25 to DB9 or DB15, we kept the DB, even though these are really DE. This is the E size connector, the smaller one. You might see them advertised both ways, though. If you're looking to buy that connector, you're looking to find that connector online, you might see these used either simultaneously on the same posting, or they might use one or the other, so just keep that in mind. They are also blue, usually. Not always, but there is a standard for connectors on personal computers called the PC System Design Guide. And you'll notice this as you go from different types of manufacturers' devices, that the interface colors tend to be the same. They don't just tend to be the same, they're standardized to be the same with a very specific color. So the VGA blue is the same VGA blue you would find on other devices. Sometimes you find these works very easily because the VGA blue plugs into a blue colored interface on the back of a computer, which can make it a little easier if you're trying to work in tight quarters and figure out where that connector happens to be. This also does not send any audio through the connection. We're so spoiled now. We plug in HDMI, it's digital video, it's sending audio through the same connection. You don't need any extra lines going to handle the audio piece. It's all on the same cable. So VGA and the digital connectivity does have a bit of an advantage over these older analog connections that we would have with something like VGA. We also tend to have a longer distance when it's digital. At least we have more options available for keeping a crystal clear image across a longer distance, and having it be digital gives us a few extra options as well. VGA, though, you may still run into these. You might go into a conference room which has an old LCD projector, and the only way to plug into that LCD projector is using a VGA connector. Fortunately, those are getting very hard to find these days. Here's a motherboard, does not use those PC colors. So as I mentioned, you can't rely on them all the time. This is the back of a computer that has an older style mini DIN keyboard / mouse connector. The keyboard and mouse is the purple and the green colors that you see here is telling us that it will work for both a mouse or a keyboard. We don't tend to see those mini DIN connectors any longer. We now just plug directly into USB, and this motherboard is conveniently put two older style USB connectors right underneath so that you can plug in your mouse and your keyboard. There is separate audio output on this device. You can see the digital audio SPDIF type connection that you have here. There's a HDMI, and there is your VGA. We also have other video connectors on here too. So if you have any type of monitor, you can plug in onto this particular motherboard. Might even work, which you don't have. I guess you don't have any type of, there's no display port here. That's the only one you kind of don't see on this particular motherboard. This one has this nice BIOS button on it. There must be multiple BIOS, so you can upgrade one BIOS, and if it has a problem, you can push the button and revert back to the other one that is on your system. Some additional USB and Ethernet connector, and then some analog audio input and output connections on the motherboard as well. So that's where you would see the VGA connector plug in. Obviously, the connector looks a lot like that one. And those of you that have worked with VGA before recognized this one immediately. You knew, oh, okay, that's VGA. You're talking 15-pin. You're talking analog video. That is a VGA connector, and that's exactly what you chose for this one. DisplayPort has a different kind of connector, and it is sending digital signals. Thunderbolt, Usually this will have either a mini DisplayPort connector, or these days Thunderbolt is using USB-C as the physical interface. So that one also being sent over a digital signal. HDMI is also digital and is a completely different connector type. We just saw that one. That HDMI was the one that we have here. And then we have our last choice, USB-C, which could have different types of video signals going across it. In this case, it would not be analog 15-pin type connector. USB-C is not an analog 15-pin connector, so it would not be that one. The only choice here that makes any sense is the one that is VGA. 85% of you chose that one, and you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, we've gotten to, I see, the top of the hour, but I want to get one more question in if I can. This next question is one that I'm going to take from a different location. These are questions that I have created specifically to test you with things that would be a little more applicable towards an actual exam. The questions that we've done so far have just been sort of a practice exam, a practice study group session type of questions to see if we really know what these topics are. But when you're ready to sit down for an actual exam, you want to use questions and study yourself, help yourself study with questions that really do emulate or have the same feel as the actual exam. And as I looked around the internet, I found that there weren't a lot of really good practice questions out there. There are some popular practice question sets out there that are asking us questions from exams that are 2 or 3 versions ago. I'm not sure why the authors are not updating their questions. Some people have come to me and said, this is a much better exam because it's hard. And I said, I think the word you're looking for is inaccurate, because it's having you answer questions on things you will never be asked about on the actual exam. And I think that makes for a very bad practice experience. You should be asked questions that apply directly to the exam that you're planning to take. For all of those reasons, I thought I need to write my own set of questions for this. Nobody's really doing any good questions out there. And so I did. I wrote a set of practice questions specifically for the 1201 exam and the 1202 exam in a series of 3 separate practice exams. This is a big book. There's a lot in here, 387 pages, 3 completely separate practice exams with 90 questions in each of them. And in those 90 questions, 85 of the questions are multiple choice. 5 of the questions are performance-based questions. And if you do the math, that means there are 15 performance-based questions inside of this book. This is one that hopefully you've been able to look at this before, but if you haven't, I've pulled a question directly from my practice exams book. This is the practice exam A. It's on page 24 of my book. It's question A72. And this question asks, which of these connection types are commonly delivered using coax to provide internet data, voice, and video over the same wire? Is that DSL, cable broadband, ONT, or PoE? Again, we're not answering this in the chat room. In fact, we're not really answering this one online at all. You're really just watching, and you and yourself decide which one of these this might be. Now, this is delivered to you either as a physical book, like the one you see here, or it is delivered as a PDF, which is what you see in front of you. This is the digital edition. And because it's a PDF, I can edit. So I can, perhaps if I see certain terms and I think these would be good things to remember, I can highlight those. If you have a stylus, you can actually write on the PDF. It's not restricted. There's nothing that's keeping you from using that. And once you step through the different answers, you may just want to know whether you picked it right. You could choose A, B, C, or D, and you just want to know, is it A, B, C, or D? I do have a link on page 31 that would just show you the quick answer. It will just tell you A, B, C, or D. But I also have a more detailed answer. We're going to look at that one. It's on page 109, but we're on page 24. Now, if you ever worked on a PDF, you know, to get page 109, you scroll. You're either scrolling with your wheel or you're using your finger on the screen trying to get to page 109. I've made it a little bit easier because I put links in for all of these. So all you have to do is hover over the details and click it, and it takes you to that page. We're on page 109 down here. If we look down here, there it is, page 109. Took us right there. And it gives us the question. It says, here's the question. Which of these connection types are commonly delivered, blah, blah, blah. It says the answer is B, cable broadband. And I give you an explanation of why that answer is the right answer. Now, my problem when I take these practice exams is that I get the questions wrong a lot of the time. And to me, that's a great opportunity to learn something that I didn't know before. The problem with a lot of other practice exams, however, is they don't tell you why the wrong answers are wrong. They only tell you why the right answer is right. Well, I knew why the right answer was right. I got it right. That's not what I need to know. I want to know why the wrong answer is wrong. So in my book, every wrong answer gives an explanation on why that is the wrong answer. In many ways, this sort of closes the loop. I think if we're trying to study and prepare for a practice exam, it would be nice to know where we got things wrong now so we don't get things wrong on the actual exam. So if you chose DSL, I give you an explanation of why DSL is not the right answer. If you chose ONT, I tell you why ONT is not the right answer. If you choose POE, I tell you why POE is not the right answer. Now, if you've read this question and you don't really understand the terms, you're not following what the question is asking you, it seems, if you think it's a trick question, I have no trick questions in my book. If it's a trick question, it's not a trick question to people who know the answer. It's when you don't know the answer that it tends to be a trick question. So to avoid any trickiness, I have put in here a link to the video that describes the technologies that were used in this question. This video is what I used to make the question. So you can go to the 220.1201 Objective 2.7 Internet Connection Types, and this will tell you what the terms are that we are using in this question. I also have links here that you can type in, and if you have the printed version or the digital version, you can use the QR code. It will also take you to that video. Don't believe me? Try it right now. You can use your camera on the screen right now. It will take you to 220.1201 Objective 2.7 Internet Connection Types, and you can watch that entire video. That is the idea behind my practice exams. Now that we're done with this question, I can click the back button in my PDF reader. Did you know there was a back button in your PDF reader? It's right up here. So I'm going to use my back button. Your PDF reader probably has a back button as well. Click, takes us right back to where we started, and we can go to the next question that is on our list. Those are my practice exams. We have these practice exams available for the Core 1 exam, for the Core 2 exam. You can buy them at the same time and get a little bit of a discount. They're all on my website. You can find out more at professormesser.com/core1pe, or you can simply use the links in the main menus or the hamburger menu at the top of the Professor Messer website. All of that is available. You can look through those. We also try to do a practice question from the book every month, so you can go back to previous study groups if you'd like another example of what those questions might be. All of the questions that we went through today all came from the official set of CompTIA exam objectives. You've heard me reference this as we've gone through this today. This gives you everything you need to know to pass the exam. Well, at least every topic you need to know. If we were to look at the list, every single one of these bullets is showing us the things that we need to understand to cover everything that we could be asked in that particular section. So for example, section 1.1, given a scenario, monitor mobile device hardware and use appropriate replacement techniques for your battery, your keyboard, your random access memory, your hard disk drive or solid state drive, your wireless cards, your biometrics, your near field scanner features, your Wi-Fi antenna connector / placement. Did I say antenna? I think I did. Camera / webcam or a microphone. So if you have that antenna and you're trying to figure out where do I plug in this antenna, you plug it in on your motherboard. It goes right there. It's my people. It's where I come from. You never see it. Oh, you should have been here Thanksgiving. It was a hoot. This is where you can at least get an idea of what you can expect to be asked on the exam. They stick to this list like glue. That means that you can go through everything that is in here. And if you know every single one of these bullets on every single one of these sections, on everything that is in the exam objectives, you're ready to take this exam and you're going to crush it. They don't go outside the scope of this document. A lot of people I've seen other resources on the internet telling you, oh, but they could ask you questions that come from somewhere else. Well, I guess they could, but they don't. I guess they could ask you whatever they want, but they don't. They stick to this list. So it's this little secret that either nobody knows about or nobody believes until they take the exam and they realize, wow, that is exactly what I want. This is available on the CompTIA website. There it is, professormesser.com/objectives. It might be a bit difficult to figure out where this particular objective list is if you go over to the CompTIA website. But if you go to professormesser.com/objectives, I tell you where those are, and I give you links to the website. The other thing that I show you, I've got a screenshot here of the CompTIA page. So here, this is the CompTIA website. When you follow these links that are on my page for the Network Plus objectives, Security Plus objectives, A Plus objectives, takes you to the page. You have to scroll down, though. Scroll down the page. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Make sure you have cookies that are enabled. Why is nobody enabling cookies anymore? Cookies was never your problem, by the way. Keep scrolling down. You're looking for this red box. So if you have everything enabled, you haven't blocked anything on the page, you will see this red box. You put in your email address, and it will give you those objectives. That is where you should go to get the objectives. Oh, and how much they cost? I'm glad you asked. They're free. They cost you nothing. How do you not grab this the very first moment you're planning to study? In fact, this makes a great checklist before you plan to book your exam. A lot of people ask me, how do I know when I'm ready? You go through the objectives. Every single bullet, you check the ones you know, you circle the ones you don't, you go back and read through the ones that you circled. Once everything is a check mark, you're now ready for your exam. It's a great way to do that. Have a look at the objectives again. That can be found at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month, which means the next study group that we do for Core 1 will be January of 2026. I can't even say that properly. It's so difficult. It's going to take a while, like everything else. Of course, we have other study groups this month as well. You should come back in a couple of days. On December the 11th, we have our Core 2 study group. And then on the following week, we have 2 more study groups for Network Plus and Security Plus. And then the last half of December, we're taking the rest of the month off. We are not doing any live streams the last part of December. You're not doing anything the last part of December either. Let's not mess around. That's exactly how it's going. It'll be the same for us, but we'll be back in January. Not only do we get 4 live streams done in December, we're not missing a thing. We're just changing around when we're doing them. And in January, we go back kind of to our normal schedule where we do A Plus on one week, Network Plus the following week, and Security Plus the week after that. There will always be something live that's on the schedule. If you want to know when that's going to be, go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll know exactly when our next live event is going to be. It's a great place to go for those of you that are looking, especially if you're watching this video on a replay and you're realizing, wow, that was 6 months ago. When's the next live event? professormesser.com/calendar, exactly where you want to go. Well, we got through an hour of Q&A already. We've got a lot to go through all of these. We also have all of our voucher discounts on our website. If you're in the US or Canada, you can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our course notes, our practice exams, and all of our additional study materials at professormesser.com/1201success. And if you're on social media, we'd like to talk to you there as well. Simply type in professormesser.com/x/Discord/Facebook/LinkedIn or whatever it happens to be. We have much more to come, although we finished with our interactive Q&A where you answer the questions. It's now time for the interactive Q&A where I answer the questions. We call this our after show. We'll be starting that in just a few seconds. Stay exactly where you are, and you'll be able to submit your questions to me, and I'll be able to answer them for you right now on this live stream. Thank you so much for joining us for our study group. We couldn't do this without you. Our last Core 1 A+ study group of the year. We're looking forward to the end of the year, and we're looking forward to what 2026 will bring. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, I'm going to take a sip. One moment. I'm going to fix my cameras. We're going to get rid of a few things on my screen. We're going to click a button here, and we're going to click a button here, and we're back. There we go. It's time for our live stream. Did I get the years right? I always worry when I'm saying a new year that I got it wrong, that I messed that one up. Oh, I didn't give you a CEU code. We should do that, shouldn't we? If you would like to earn a continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that has that CEU as part of the email. The way that you would do that is you go to the top or the bottom of the professormesser.com website. If you go there, you will see that there's a link for Contact Us. It's really Contact Me. It's what that is. It's at the top or the bottom of the site. Click that link. It will bring up a form. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put December 2025 Core 1. That will help me know where this came from. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, VGA HDMI. Where did I get that from? I don't know. Did I get it from here? Got it from there. Got it from here. That's where I got it from. The super secret code words of the month are VGA HDMI. Put that in there, click send. I know what to do with it. I can take it from there. Again, the process is you go to the top or the bottom of ProfessorMesser.com, click the link for Contact Us. In that message or the form that comes up, please put your message, put your name. That would be good. Put your email address. That would be better. On the subject line, please put December 2025 Core 1. And in the body of the message on the line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, VGA HDMI. Those are 2 words. Super secret code words of the month, VGA and HDMI. Well, now it's time for the after show, everybody. We got lots of questions that have come in, and I want to step through the questions that you have about CompTIA, about IT, about technology, or really about anything else. You're welcome to submit any question you would like at any time using the same link that we've been using already. It's a link at the top of the screen. Just click the tab to go to the Q&A in our Q&A board. And the Q&A that we have, I will click a few things on my side to be able to view the information that we have here. You will see if you go to our website, and you're looking at these, we have for you that you can submit questions. Let's see if I can type it in. This is always a challenge for me, is to have the right thing clicked on the screen for the things that we need to do. There we go. You can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution, it will not appear immediately. Wouldn't just may not appear immediately. It's not going to appear until I click a button on my side. And we'll be able to step through it as we go through these. You've already submitted a number of questions. You can submit more at any time following that link, professormesser.com/QA. Well, let's start broadly. Let's start with the personal question, shall we? This is from Ryan. Ryan asks, how'd you get into IT? How did you first get into IT? And why IT as opposed to firefighting or finance or working in the field? I should have been just had a bunch of cows. I could have been a rancher, could have been a farmer. We could have done that. I come from a very rural part of the country, northern part of Florida. I grew up in a town that continues to have no red, yellow, green traffic light. So a relatively small town. When I say a town, I mean a town, not a city. It was a town. There were not a lot of folks in our town to be able to do that. One of the things that was important in that town was the things you would commonly think about that type of rural America. A lot of farming in our particular city. Or I use city sort of colloquially there. It was indeed a town. There were a lot more people outside the city limits than there were inside the city limits, if that gives you some perspective. The city, in fact, where I grew up, we would have every year the watermelon festival. That's it. One thing, not a farming festival. We grew so many watermelons in our county that we would have a watermelon festival every year. That is just typical Americana. And everybody seems to have one. The next county over had a pine tree festival. The next county over had a rose festival. We would pick these one things and we would all celebrate. But it was a great time to have a parade, and we could cook things, and there would be art, and we would have the Miss Watermelon Queen. We would do that. It sounds funny to say it out loud, really, but we would have so much fun. It was just this little small town. Not a lot of technology, but technology sort of fits everywhere. It sort of seeps into every part of what we do. And when the first types of computing technologies were available for our homes, I had a gravitation towards them. I was really interested in those types of systems, of understanding how everything worked. I love to take things apart and put things back together. I love the mechanical aspect of it, but digital technology was different. There weren't any moving parts. It just sat there. You turned it on and nothing moved. And that was interesting to me. That intrigued me quite a bit. When I went to college, there weren't a lot of technology degrees. Back in the days I went to college, we didn't have a lot of technology degrees. We just simply, there were a number. There was a lot of programming, a lot of computer science. I got a business degree. I got a management degree. There was an MIS degree at the time, Management Information Services. And what that effectively was is half of your classes were management classes, which I was already taking, and half of your classes were programming classes, which I had no interest in. And I really don't have a lot of interest in programming. That just wasn't my thing, but IT certainly was. And I knew at that point I wanted to do something with computers, but computers weren't mainstream at the time. It was really really niche. I was lucky enough to get a job right out of college working as a field service technician, working specifically with PCs, and I had to move to Miami to be able to take that job. So I moved far away from my home, moved to the big city, all them fancy talking big city types. And it was incredible the things I was able to learn because there was just so much technology in one single place. Had a lot of customers. Each customer had different types of configurations. So in one day, I would be visiting one customer to upgrade their storage drives and give them more storage space on their computers because they were a company that made hospital supplies. And so we needed to make sure the hospital supplies were able to be produced. And another time I might go down to the police department and upgrade the memory in their DNA sequencer and their DNA programs. So that was kind of cool to be able to open up their computers and upgrade the memory. And that's what they were using to do their DNA testing at the time. That was also the time I locked my keys in the car. If you ever lock your keys in the car, the best place you can be is the police department. We'll tell you that because they sent me across the hall to the auto burglary team. There were the detectives there that handled all the burglary calls for auto. And they go, "Oh, you were just fixing the DNA machine? We can get your keys out. What type of car do you have?" And I told them. The guy opened the drawer of his desk, reached down, pulled the drawer open. It was one of these deep desk drawers, like one of the biggest kinds you can have in a desk. He opened it up and it was full of tools you would use to break into a car. Tools that he had obviously accumulated through the years in his particular job. Like, wow, okay. He says, "What type of car is it?" I told him. I believe at the time I was driving a Mitsubishi Colt. That was it. It was, or is it Dodge Colt? It was the Mitsubishi version of the Dodge Colt. Dodge at that time and Mitsubishi had a deal where they would just put the same name on the back, different name on the back of the car. It was made by the same folks. So he said, "Okay." And he reached down and he pulled out one Slim Jim. Slim Jims, for those of you that haven't seen them, are these very thin pieces of metal. They're like an inch wide. They're very thin, and they have a little hook on the end. And he took it out to the car. He goes, "That's yours?" I go, "Yep, you can see my keys are right there in the ignition where I left them. And that's my car." He goes, "Okay." And he did this. Boom. Literally took that long. He just put the Slim Jim right next to my window and went clunk. The Slim Jim, it went down between the window inside of the device. He knew exactly where to hit it. Clunk. And the lock popped right up. He goes, "There you go." And I thought, this is the worst kind of security you can have. This is the worst locking mechanism anyone could ever hope for, was the locking mechanism in these old style cars. It's not gotten much better, by the way. There are very easy ways to get into your cars these days to make that happen. That was exceptionally easy though. So that was how my first jobs, where I was really in the industry, really doing things that were technical. I was touching it. I was going from place to place and making that happen. So I think when people get into IT, I think we're already leaning that direction. I think it's people that like to work with technology as part of it. I love a good gadget. I love gadgets. I love looking through different online catalogs of gadgets. I like it when a new gadget arrives. I like security gadgets. I like it when people have videos using the security gadgets. I'm a gadget person. I like that part of it. So part of it was just I'm intrigued by those different little baubles. I like them a lot. The other part is I think the people who get into IT, the ones who really get into IT, and I would probably put myself in that category, are ones that have more of a focus on solving problems. You like a problem. You like to solve puzzles. If you're that kind of person, you like the Sudoku, you like having a logic problem that you like to step through, you love a good murder mystery, there's a problem that needs to be solved. That is what we do in IT multiple times a day. And in fact, the ones you really remember the most are the hardest ones. The ones where it's a problem, multiple people have looked through it. There have been months of work that have gone into trying to figure out what's going on with this problem. It only happens intermittently, only with one particular system and not in. There's all these scenarios where we're trying to solve these problems. Most of the time, I think we're able to solve them. Sometimes there are these problems that go on for weeks and weeks and months, and it really takes a lot of effort and multiple people to solve those problems. But I think solving puzzles is something, whether you realize it or not. If you're in IT, you're a problem solver. You love to solve the puzzles. That's another part of this. And then another part of this, and I think that was the part that really intrigued me, was it was interesting to talk and meet with the people who like to solve puzzles too. I mean, you like to hang out with people that are similar to, that like things that are similar to you. And in IT, we do tend to have kind of a connection between all of us. And I've seen this in all these different jobs that I've had through the years, because I started off in that field service job. I got a job working in a help desk in an insurance company. And in that help desk, I moved up into the server, or really the workstation management team, then the server management team, then the network management team, and then ultimately moved up into IT security. And it took a number of years to go through that path, to follow that number of jobs that finally got me to IT security. And it was really it was kind of a transition job. I was working for an insurance company, worked for a value-added reseller for a short period of time. And then I moved into a company doing network management. Specifically, it was Network General. They're the company that made a product known as the Sniffer, which many people have heard of. It's almost a generic term we use these days for packet captures. And that company got bought by McAfee, and that turned into Network Associates, because it was McAfee Associates and Network General. So they got rid of the network and they got rid of the McAfee, and now we have they got rid of the network. They kept the network. Network Associates. They got rid of the General. No more General. We got Network Associates. And then Network Associates was in this time where a lot of technology companies, a lot of technology companies were making acquisitions. It's almost like nothing has changed. But at that time, we were really making acquisitions. This was the days where the internet was really starting to become mainstream, where people were opening online web stores for very niche products. Some of you don't remember justballs.com, a real website. Guess what they sold? That's right, just balls. That was it. You get basketballs, you get soccer balls, you could get handballs, it's amazing it didn't stick around. How could that not have worked? I guess there is a point where you can get a little bit too niche. But they started buying all kinds of companies. They bought they bought PGP. So for the asymmetric encryption technologies involved with PGP, they bought PGP. They bought firewall company. They bought an IPS company. They already had antivirus. They now had Network General for the packet capturing and spun that into capturing to disk, terabytes and terabytes of data to disk on a large network. So I was able to get a lot more security knowledge working as a systems engineer with the security products. And one of the first people that was certified in the firewall, the IPS, the encryption, the antivirus, the network management, all of it at the same time. It was a great time to be a technical person because you were inundated. They couldn't make mergers and acquisitions fast enough. They were just buying someone every week, it seemed. And so I got to learn quite a bit. Having all of that knowledge in your brain about all of those different technologies and learning it at the level required for someone representing the product gave me an interesting scope as to what technologies really were interesting to me. And that's the one that allowed me to move into firewalls. Ultimately, that was my last corporate gig, was working for Palo Alto Networks as a systems engineer. And that was the one where I started with them as the group that would begin bringing that technology to the market. So the best thing I can hope for is for you to have a similar path, one that is interesting to you, one that is dynamic, one that sometimes changes on a daily basis. And occasionally, like with me, some of the opportunities I got were opportunities that I wasn't looking for, that just, I got a phone call, I got an email. Just in the middle of the day, when you weren't expecting it, somebody shows up and says, would you be interested in doing this? I would. That sounds good to me. And that's how it worked out. That was my last corporate gig. From there, I realized that there was a need on the internet to have more people knowledgeable in these technologies. And so I started my own company focused on providing people with a way to learn this without having to spend any money. That you could learn everything you needed by watching free videos on YouTube, which at the time people weren't doing. Well, at the time, YouTube did not exist. We started Messer Studios on blip.io. There you go. Those of you, anyone? Blip.io? Anyone? No? There's no one? No blip.io. We had 1 million views on blip.io. Blip.io went away. It got overwhelmed by the rest of that industry. And we moved over to Vimeo. Obviously, Vimeo is still around. And in fact, Vimeo was doing HD when nobody else was. YouTube, when they started, YouTube was obviously acquired by Google. Google did not create YouTube. It was a separate entity. They purchased YouTube. YouTube did not have HD at the time. And so when they got HD, probably just before that, we started moving everything over to the YouTube side, and this is where we are. There you go. That is the story of getting into IT. And why didn't I go into firefighting? Why didn't I go into finance? I guess I could have gone into finance. I had a business degree, but finance didn't really interest me. There was no problems to solve there. There was no big problems to solve there. Everything was very much ones and zeros. You put this data in, it's stored that way, and there you go. Everything equals zero at the end of the day. Boring, not my gig. I'm very happy for the people that do finance, though, because now I can have them deal with the finance things that I don't want to have to deal with. Thankfully, someone is interested in finance. Firefighting? I don't know, brother. Not really my gig either. And I'm glad that didn't work out either. You know, that's not exactly what I like to do. Growing up in a small town, you tend to do jobs that are very menial because those are the jobs available. A good example of this, one of the very first jobs I ever got was working in the fields. And in where I'm from, working in the fields means that around 6 a.m, a pickup truck would pull up outside your house. You jump in the back with a bunch of other people. They take you, 15 miles outside of town to the fields. They drop you off with your accoutrement of the day. I would hoe. I had a hoe. And they said, here's a bunch of weeds. There's a bunch of plants in between. Get rid of the weeds, keep the plants. You got it, boss. So I'd put the gloves on, and that's where we would be all day, is in the fields, just hoeing away at the weeds. The reason I mention that, and we probably have all had jobs like this. If you've worked for a fast food company, your very first job in any type of industry is probably this way. Not fun jobs. Not anything you would ever want to do your entire life. And that for me was very formative. Having an example of something that I really, really, really didn't want to do made me realize how important it was to position myself so I wouldn't have to do that. So it's very motivating to me that I had that position. I'm so glad I got that job. one I did not enjoy. Fortunately, it was only for a summer. And then I was able to take that and leverage it into how can I get good grades? How can I get into college? How can I learn more about these computers? Where can I get jobs about computers? You're very laser focused at that point. And so I think if you want to position yourself as someone who is in technology, interested in technology, wanting to do more with technology, sometimes having a non-technical job and a really bad job on top of that, or one that's just very, it requires a lot from you. Maybe you don't even hate it, but it just has a lot that it requires from you. Getting into technology, very different thing. I'm thinking as I'm hoeing, like, I would love to have a job inside with air conditioning that did not involve me holding this hoe. That's all I wanted. It worked out. So that's what we would do to make that happen. I think there's probably this idea of that people are not able to find those jobs today or find the things that interest them. The economy goes up and down all the time. But if you stick with what you want to do and you lean in that direction and you put together a strategy and a set of plans that takes you from where you are now to where you want to be, you have to put together that strategy. You can't just hope it happens. These jobs don't fall from the sky and here's your IT position. Oh, I wasn't even looking for an IT position. It just fell from the sky. They don't do that generally. You have to position yourself and be ready for it. I've had those phone calls out of the blue, but when that phone call came, I had to be ready. The last position I had at Palo Alto Networks was a really good example of this. Someone I had not spoken to in years called me and said, hey, I just saw this company. We've worked together in the past. When they said we need a systems engineer, I thought of you first thing. Is this something you'd be interested in doing? I thought interested. I didn't even know it existed 30 seconds ago. Let's talk more about this. What is going on there? If you're interested, it was somebody I had a lot of respect for. If he thought it was interesting, I naturally am like, I need to know more. You know, they saw something that I should be more knowledgeable in. And so that's sort of how that worked out. But I had to have already in my pocket the knowledge of encryption, the knowledge of firewall security, understanding IPS, understanding protocols, knowing how the networks went together, designing the networks, designing the systems. You need to have done all of that already. If I wanted to get that position and didn't have any of that experience, they wouldn't have hired me. They barely hired me as it was. Startups are very picky about who they hire. And at the time, Palo Alto Networks was definitely in startup mode. So we were not a public company. I think I was employee number like 85, less than 100 people at the company. So it was just one of those cases where you have to prepare, you have to study, you have to plan, you have to learn, you have to build that technical foundation. And the better foundation you have, the more options will be available to you on the other side of that. So keep that in mind as well. There's some work that goes into that, but definitely that work pays off. There's really no question. Let's keep going through our list of questions you have sent. I kind of talked a lot on that one, but that's what the after show is about, is us talking about different things and different questions that we might have. Let's go through the list of these. So this is one where I get this question quite a bit. Not this specific question, but similar questions. This one's from Bridget, who says, what's new on this test versus the 901 and 902? Bridget has been asleep for a very long time, I'm guessing. 901, 902 are very old at this point. CompTIA tends to name or number their exams with that number that's in the front. So the existing version of the A+ exams is the 1201 and 1202. So 9, 10, 11, this is three exam versions after the 901 and 902. You can also put about 3 years between each one of these. 3, 6, 9. This is 9 years ago. This is 10-year topic. So what's new on this test versus the 901 and 902? Almost all of it, I think. There are some things that are still on there, but if you went back and looked at the 901 and 902 materials, it would give you, if you can even find those materials now, it might be difficult to do that. What year was the 901, 902 done? I'm glad you asked, because I happen to have the retirement dates on my computer that I reference everything to. So the 901, 902 were released in December the 15th of 2015, so 10 years ago, and they retired in 2019. So they're definitely older exams. So since then, we've had the 1001 and 1002, the 1101 and 1102, and now, of course, we're on the 1201 and 1202. I do not have a summary for you, Bridget, on what the differences are between the 901 and 902. But if you go to the Professor Messer website and you bring up any link to the 1201 or the 1202 topics, so for example, if you go to the free Core 1 videos, well, thank you, Google, for the ad that's there. It will take you to the video page, and at the very top is a little box that says, what's new in the 1201 exam? Click here to read through our detailed breakdown. Well, let's click on that, and let's read the detailed breakdown that is there. I have two documents I've created, one for the 1201 and one for the 1202. I've also done this for the Network Plus and Security Plus. And I have a chart that shows you when those exams are available. You can see the 1101 is retired on September 25th. You could see the 1201, 1202 timeframes as well. I also break out each individual section of the exam, and I try to find out what topics moved to the new version and what topics were dropped. And I create a Venn diagram of that. Anything that's shared is in the middle. 1101 topics that were dropped are in the yellow. 1201 topics that are added are in the blue. And I give you the actual numbers on here so you can break those down and get a feel for what those actually are. And then I break down for you for each individual domain what topics were dropped. So for example, on the 1101 exam, domain 1 mobile devices, mobile display components was dropped. Things like GSM versus CDMA are no longer in the exam. Things like PRL updates are no longer in the exam. So if you're going through some practice exams and they talk about the differences between GSM and CDMA, those are old questions. You won't be asked about that on the exam. If you're getting questions about PRL updates, I mean, that's interesting and all, but you're not going to get anything like that on your exam. So I go through each section and I tell you what's been dropped, and then I tell you what's been added. So you will get Wi-Fi data networks, SIM and eSIM. What are the differences? MDM device configurations. What about the 6 gigahertz wireless band? What about physical media access control addresses? What about proprietary crash screens and styluses not working and intermittent internet connectivity? Those are the options. So I try to detail as much as possible in these documents so that you get an understanding of what is expected on the exam. That might be a good place to go to at least get some feel. It doesn't go back to the 900 series. Sorry about that. But it does give you at least an idea of what the latest is so that you can make some decisions on maybe where you can focus your efforts if you are migrating from the previous version of the exam to the new version of the exam. Let's do some more questions. Let's just do a technology question. This is not about certifications. This is not about A+, just more of a cert question. Let's bring it up. There you go. Move to publish. This from Joshua, who says, the time server on my laptop is time.windows.com. Are there other reliable ones you suggest instead? Now, this is implying that time.windows.com is not reliable. I tend to have a lot of success with time.windows.com. But maybe you don't like that it's going to Microsoft. Maybe you think they're watching my time synchronizations or whatever. Or maybe you just don't want to use time.windows.com. Maybe you are having some type of reliability problems. Maybe there's some filtering on your network that limits your access to time.windows.com. So there's a couple ways that you can go with this. The one that I tend to use, well, I tell you on my systems, I have a lot of Apple equipment. So if you've seen our studio, everything that I'm using in front of me, this is a Mac Studio, this is a Mac Pro, this is an iPad. So a lot of the things I use for production are Mac OS. A lot of the systems I have in my home are Windows systems, so I don't use exclusively Mac. And as you've been on ProfessorMesser.com, those are multiple Linux machines, so I don't care what operating system you use. And I have no fight here between operating systems that anyone might use. But maybe you want something that is not related to a corporate entity. Maybe you don't want to use time.apple.com. You don't want to use time.windows.com. You want this to be a little more open. than others. If that's the case, you probably just saw me. Well, you didn't see me typing it because I had this up. There you go. I have this. This is pool.ntp.org. Pool, P-O-O-L, there it is. It's a public NTP time server that has servers around the world. In North America alone are 1,187 servers. In Europe, there are 3,680 pool.ntp servers. That's a lot. So if you want something that's very broad, used by many people, very reliable, I've used pool.ntp.org on many projects that I've worked on. That might be a good one to focus on. Let's see if I can do a quick thing with some stuff. Make this. It would be nice if I type things on my screen. I'm looking to find out from my perspective. Yeah, that worked good. I did a dig command. I did a dig of pool.ntp.org. See, we got some A+ stuff we stuck into this. So on my system, I use dig. You could do an ns lookup to pool.ntp.org. And it said, oh, well, you're doing a dig, and the dig, you're using dig version 9.10.6. You're going to pool.ntp.org. No real global options you're using. You're doing the default, which is just plus CMD. And I got an answer, and the answer showed it was an opcode of query. There were no errors as part of the status, and the ID number was 6590. Not that that matters. And then there are other things here that make no sense unless you look at the documentation for dig, which is the flags, QR, RD, and RA, query 1, answer 4. So we had one query, and we got 4 answers from it. If we were to look at this, it also gives me sort of a pseudo section that shows me I was using UDP port 1232 to send this information to pool.ntp.org, which is obviously, this is a DNS request. So this probably went out as to the source is UDP 53. And it shows me that I wanted to know what IP addresses were associated with pool.ntp.org. IN is internet, A is address. And the answer section is not just one IP address. Look at all these. There's a bunch of addresses there. Whoops. Bunch of addresses there. There they are. So it shows me that anytime I do a lookup to pool.ntp.org, it's going to give me 4 different addresses. Now, these are 200, 167, 190, 159. Let's do another one, shall we? So we got the same thing back on me because these are now cached. But if I cleared my cache, I bet I would get 4 more. And it's probably doing them on the local NTP servers. They're probably doing some type of round-robin load balancing using DNS because that would be very easy to do with this particular utility. But there's how not just one server is there. If one server is not available, then I can use any of these other IP addresses. And the application I'm using will use other IP addresses. In fact, the NTP service you're using that you're configuring might have options to add additional IP addresses, and you can add all of those into that mix. Most of the time, you don't have to worry about it. You just use pool.ntp.org, use that, or you can hard code one of those into the mix. There are other more, I wouldn't say more public, other publicly available NTP resources out there. Time.windows.com and time.apple.com are probably the most common, I would think. I don't think there's others that you would find that are anything like that, but that is one that I use all the time. And if you're looking to use something other than time.windows.com or something other than time.apple.com, maybe that's where you go with those. You have a look at pool, P-O-O-L, .ntp.org. That will get you there. Let's keep going through this list. Here is a common question that we should all fight about. We shouldn't fight about it, but there is a lot of controversy regarding this particular question. Giuseppe asks, hi, Professor. I wonder if you think performance-based questions would be worth more points than multiple answer questions, a multiple choice question. I have my Core 1 exam. Wish me luck. Well, first, Giuseppe, good luck on your Core 1 exam. I don't think you're going to need it. I think you're going to do fine. You don't need luck from me. You're doing all the hard work now. So the luck is just something that shows up after you do a bunch of hard work, apparently. But the question is a good one. And the question is performance-based questions and how they are valued on the exam as compared to a multiple choice question. So let's break this down a bit. So here's part of the problem. Here's the big problem. Not just part of the problem, it is the problem. CompTIA does not share anything relating to the scoring of their exams. CompTIA does not share anything relating to the scoring of their exams. You don't know how the exams are scored. The only thing that we have been able to discern is that we believe each question is worth a different number of points. That is something I think we can all agree on, that everybody agrees on. Even CompTIA agrees on that one. Each question is worth a different number of points. How many points is each question worth? We don't know. They don't tell you. But we know that this question may be worth a certain number of points. The next question worth a completely different number of points. We don't know. And they don't disclose this. You will never know how many points a particular question is worth. And by never, I mean never. You will never know. It is a mystery of the universe that when the sun goes supernova and envelops the entire galaxy, we will still not know how CompTIA scored these exams. There's somebody there locked in a room. They're in the basement in Illinois. They're outside Chicago, and they feed them through the door, and they're the one that figures out what the scoring is. Nobody else knows. We don't know how they score. What I have seen most recently, and I've talked about this really over a number of years, is people do tend to believe that the performance-based questions are worth more than the multiple choice questions. However, there is absolutely zero evidence of that being the case. That is pure speculation. It's just a guess. People are seeing the performance-based questions. They're not used to performance-based questions. They're very new to them. Everybody knows what a multiple choice question is. We've had those for years. We had those in elementary school. We had multiple choice questions. But performance-based questions could be anything else. That effectively is the definition of a performance-based question, anything that is not multiple choice. Well, that means they could ask you anything in any format that you could ever come up with. And that's a performance-based question. And that's a pretty accurate definition of a performance-based question. Anything that is not multiple choice is a performance-based question, period. Bottom line, that's what they do. So these could be a fill in the blank. They could be one that puts you at a command prompt. They could be one where you have to drag and drop things on the screen. They could be a pull-down menu of things you would choose from. They could present questions in any way they'd like. And I think a lot of people get very concerned about that. They're very worried that they can't predict what is coming, or at least what style of question is coming. But as I've often said, it doesn't matter what the style of question is. It's irrelevant, quite honestly, what the style of question is, because if you know your exam objectives, you've gone through that list, and you have looked at every single bullet that's on your exam objectives. You've memorized all the port numbers. You know all of these things you need to know about wireless networking technologies. You understand all of the different services provided by these networked hosts, and on and on and on. You know all of this cold. You can explain to yourself or to someone else what a LAN network type is and why that is important, what a wide area network is and why that is important, what a wireless local area network is and why that is important. If you can do all of that for every bullet that's in the exam objectives, then it doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer. That's it. That's a performance-based question. Something that I have also mentioned before on these live streams, and I've seen a lot more evidence of it most recently, is that there have been people that have come to me after an exam, and they've said, I took my A+ exam. I saw the performance-based questions at the beginning, because it's usually the first handful of questions on your exam. They see it, and they just skip over it. You can click next. You don't have to answer them. You can just keep going You can go through that handful of questions until you get to the multiple choice questions. And then they went through all of the multiple choice questions. They did all of those. And they got to the last multiple choice question and they go, okay, let's circle back to the performance-based questions. They tried to circle back and their 90 minutes was up. Ding, you're finished. No, nothing more you can do. Your exam is over. And they never were able to answer any of their performance-based questions. None of them. And so they clicked the button, okay, done, now what? And it said, congratulations, you passed. That's it. They passed the exam without answering any of the performance-based questions. Just in this last week, I have had 3 people, 2 of them said, I took the exams, I didn't answer one of those performance-based questions, and I passed. And the third person said, I answered one of them. I don't think I answered it right, and I still passed. Now, that does not mean that on your exam, the point distribution that they used would allow you to pass without getting any of those performance-based questions right. But it certainly looks that way. It certainly puts more of an emphasis on getting the multiple choice questions right. You can't forget about that part. But a lot of people, I think, worry that the performance-based questions are more than what you would run into, that they're worth half of the exam, for example. I think people have in their mind, they're worth half of the exam points, and I don't know what they're going to ask of me, and therefore they must be much harder than the actual exam questions. I don't think either of those things is true. I don't think you need to know the details of that. The thing that I would like to focus on with these is just knowing the objectives. If you know the exam objectives, it doesn't matter how they ask the question. It doesn't matter how many questions there are. It doesn't matter if they're multiple choice, performance-based, fill in the blank, drag and drop, or whatever. If you know the objectives, you can answer any question that is posed to you. The entire thing could be fill in the blank and you would get every single one of them right because you already know the topics. You already know the objectives. So whether you're taking the A+, the Network Plus, Security Plus, I really feel that is very similar between all of them, is that the performance-based questions are rarely as important as people tend to think they are. Almost never are they as important as people think they are. And I also feel that people think they are much harder than they actually are. I get a lot of comments after someone goes to an exam and they'll say, well, I'm not going to tell you what the questions were about. They say, I thought they were going to be much harder than they were. These questions were much easier than I was expecting. These questions came right from the exam objectives. I don't know why I was worried about them. That's very common feedback that I get. Now, occasionally they'll throw a challenging question on there. But if you know the exam objectives, then you know how to cover that particular question. CompTIA is not trying to create hard questions. They're not trying to create, at least I don't believe this. I don't work with their exam creation team. So this is my speculation. I don't believe they're creating questions to make questions impossible to answer. I think they're trying to find the right format of question that properly tests you on the things that you need to know from the exam objectives. They want questions that will really tell, do you know your stuff? And if you don't know your stuff, you won't get them right. If you do know your stuff, you will get them right. That's what they're trying to do, in my opinion. I think they're really trying to focus on giving you the right type of question to really tell if you know the content. What I tend to find in the performance-based questions is multiple topics sometimes on the same performance-based question. So it might have a little bit about routing and a little bit about cables in the same question. You know, those are not the same thing, but you have to know both of those technologies on A+, therefore you need to know both of those on the same question. So sometimes you'll find some of those. I think it throws people a bit when they run into that. But I don't think you need to worry about this. When people say, well, clearly the performance-based questions are worth more points. I said, clearly? How clear is this? Can you point to the clear part? Because we have no evidence that that's the case. And in fact, we now have evidence that maybe it isn't the case if we try to reverse engineer all of this. Or maybe a performance-based question is worth the same amount of points as multiple choice. We just don't know. And I usually ask, okay, well, how many multiple choice questions equals the same number of points as performance-based? They say, I don't know. I go, that's right. We don't know. We have no idea. It could be worth less. So I would say, and what I often say, is stop trying to reverse engineer the grading system. It doesn't matter ultimately. You will never know how it was graded. The grading itself is not shown to you during, before, or after the exam. They don't talk about, there's no way to get that information after the exam is over. You are simply presented at the end of the exam with a pass or a fail and what your score was. That's it. And you get the score immediately after your exam. You do have to go through some demographic questions. But once you submit your exam and answer the demographic questions, it tells you if you passed or if you failed and tells you what the score was right then. It's all calculated immediately. Now, if that's the case, then maybe we can reverse engineer some of it. You can't, because all you have is one number. And you have no idea how that number was generated. You don't, in fact, there are sometimes, this often happens on the exam, not often, but occasionally will happen on an exam, that you will get a question that is not covering topics from your exam objectives. Sometimes CompTIA will put a question on your exam about a topic that you weren't expecting. And they do this for their own awful reasons. I don't know why they continue. I've seen a lot less on this on their exams recently, thankfully. They used to do this a lot. And I understand what they're doing. They're trying to discern how much technical knowledge you have about a certain thing that maybe you didn't specifically study on. They really want that kind of feedback, and maybe they'll use that on a future exam. I get why they did it, but I find that it's disruptive. I find that if you've really studied for this exam and then you run across a question that's asking you about golden retrievers and you're thinking, why? There's no golden retrievers on the exam objectives. Why did I get a question on golden retriever? And then now you answer the question, but now where did the golden retrievers come from? Does anybody know what we're doing with golden retrievers? Now you're thrown. Now you've your concentration's been thrown a little bit. Are there other dog questions? I didn't study dog questions. What are we going to... You don't want to be in that situation. So they've done a lot now with making sure the exams really focus more on the things that you have learned, but you still might find one of those. They do say on their candidate agreement, or it's on their instruction sets, that yeah, they could ask you something that is outside the scope of the objectives. And they do say that on the objectives, that this is not a comprehensive list. We can ask you anything, and it could very possibly not be on this list of objectives. But as it turns out, in practice, they don't do that. I think that's more of a legal thing they put in there so that nobody gets upset when they get a question about Windows 12 or whatever it is. And they're trying to figure out, why did I get a question about Windows 12? Don't worry about it. Just keep moving. Just concentrate, keep it going. Don't worry about the golden retrievers. Just keep everything moving. You're going to be fine. And quite honestly, if you miss one question on the exam, that's not the end of the world. That's not a big problem. Get all the rest of them right, and you've still passed the exam. So those are some very broad strategies, I think I can say, when you're talking about exams, the way they work. But that is something you do have to keep in mind, that performance-based questions are on the exam. It'd be good if you did pass them. It'd be good if you did get them right. There are some people, though, that even don't pass those performance-based questions and still pass their exam. So there's still hope. Never expect that that would be the case. But indeed, that tends to be how it seems to be working out. Let's keep going through our list of questions. Thank you, by the way, for sending these questions in. If you have a question, you could submit them. Well, maybe not at this point. You could have submitted them at professormesser.com/QA. You can still submit them or keep them in your pocket. And when we do the next study group 2 days from now on Thursday for the Core 2 study group, you can always submit those questions there as well. Let's try to fit one more in, though, right? This is This is both a funny one and a not funny question. This is more of a personal question, but I'll take it anyway because we tend to do a lot of technology questions. Time to do something that pries into my personal life, which who doesn't want that? That would be me. Christopher says, or Christopher, or both. Both of you said, what do you do in your free time when you're not thinking about IT at all? That idea of free time made me laugh a little. Any hobbies or sports you follow? Brother, I do not have time to follow any sports. Somebody recently, I was walking through somewhere and they said, yeah, you can get that for the Super Bowl. I'm like, is it Super Bowl time? What happened? Was there a football season? I had no idea. You know, one of the things that you should ask this of somebody who's in IT who doesn't own their own company. And I think you get a better answer than what I have. If you're someone who has started your own company, you're in charge of this company succeeding or failing, you don't have any free time. I get up in the morning, I'm in my office by 7, I'm here until 7. I like to say I work half days, 7 to 7. That's half day, right? And usually even after that. So whenever you've probably seen this from other content creators on YouTube and other places, when they get into doing this, they realize, wow, I got to create content every minute of every day. That's effectively what we do. We are creating content every minute of every day. Some of these things you see, the YouTube videos, the live streams, and the other information, some of these things you haven't seen yet. They're projects that we're working on that we will be releasing, and then you'll be able to see these. So that is what I would always recommend doing is if you're starting your own company, get ready for no free time because you really don't have much there at all. Now, I do live in Central Florida. So when I do get chances to step away from all of this, certainly. It's not 24/7. Every waking moment, I am not staying away from my family and being in here. We do a lot of great things together as a family. And I think that is a great thing to do because I'm in Central Florida. There's tons of things to do. You've got all of the theme parks. You've got special events in town. You've got nice restaurants to go to. Sometimes just staying at home and having a meal together. I have dinner with my family every night. I think that's just a dream to be able to do that. And then on larger events like holidays, Thanksgiving, everybody comes over and we just have such a good time. It's a great time, just relax and hang out with them. Usually when I'm done with my day, I'll close things up. I'll have dinner with the family. And then I like to just do something. I don't stay too far away from technology though. I like gaming. Video games has been part of my life since I was very young, since there were no video games, since video games were created, I've always been fascinated with video games. And I'm not sure if I'm more fascinated about the underlying technologies or if I'm more fascinated about solving problems, which I think is part of it. But I do like to do that. My big thing recently, okay, if we get to geek out a little bit, my big thing recently is I got a Legion Go S. This was about 6 months ago before the new versions came out. And so I just hooked that up to Steam and I like ARPGs. So I'll do PoE, PoE 2, Diablo 4. Those are the ones I like, but there's other games that I have on this. If you haven't downloaded, installed, and run just a time-wasting game, then you really haven't enjoyed the technology right. So you need to really find something like the pressure cleaner game where all you do is clean the dirt off of. Sometimes you just need that. You just need something very simple, something not difficult, something where you could just kind of zen. There's a place for those games too. I don't do too many of those. I kind of like the excitement of action and the ARPG type of gaming. That's just lots of explosions and lots of fireworks and lots of flames. Those are always fun too. But I love anything that's a puzzle. Puzzles are, and maybe that is part of the IT part of that. So anything that is the Sudoku sort of world of puzzling is always kind of fun too. But then it's usually just hanging out with the family and doing interesting things. So you never know what might be interesting at any particular time. I don't have a lot of free time though. It's an hour or two in a night. That's sort of it. Most of the time is invested in this. Many people don't realize just how much time and how much work it takes to run a business. And there's a lot more than just creating content and putting it on YouTube. There's a lot around the tax part of it. And what about creating the new content? And what about the plans for the new year? And what about this and that and the others? We work with a lot of partners, and you have to make sure everything's still working. And a lot of this focuses on automation. A lot of this focuses on scripting. A lot of the things that I would normally have to do manually, I have automated. And I think that's an important thing that a lot of people don't do in their businesses. If you're ever planning to start a company, you can't do everything yourself. You're going to be your own marketing. You're going to be your own accounting. You're going to be your own graphics. You're going to be your own web hosting. Are you going to be your own web development? Are you going to... There's no way one person can do all of that. You have to pick and choose where you're outsourcing. You have to pick and choose who you partner with, and you have to pick the right ones. I've not always made the right decisions when putting these things together, but I've always corrected the problems that we have run into. Sometimes it's a learning process to make that happen. So if you're planning to start a company, I think it's a very gratifying thing. It's a fun thing to do, but I think that you really need, and we don't do AI. We do not do AI here. There is that's not entirely true. 0.0001% of what we do is AI. The title slides on this, that's AI. That's AI. That was a real picture, and they made kind of an paper art version of it. The people who made the real picture, because of the system that I use for my stock photos, the person that made the original stock photo, they are compensated because I used an AI generated version of that photo. Just so you're aware. That is the only thing we do AI with, because AI is horrible in its accuracy. It is not accurate at all for the types of things that we do. We're creating content for people to get an IT certification. And when you look at AI engines that at best are 70% accurate, how would you like 70% of your training materials to be inaccurate? It's just an awful way to do this level of content. It's nowhere close to doing what we need to do. So maybe someday it will get there. It won't get there. That's just I think we've come past the point of the hype, and the hype curve is now back on its way down. And I think that we're all realizing the realities of AI. Now that we're seeing that even Meta is firing their AI people, we're like, oh, okay, we get it. Didn't work for you either. It's not working for us. Didn't work for you either. It's making a lot of people less smart. There are sort of some negatives to AI we haven't really considered for our culture. And people are using AI in ways they probably should not be, because you're missing the problem-solving part of it. In a way, it's great for us, isn't it? What am I talking about? Everyone should do AI. Everybody that I ever work with, whoever has a computer and has a problem, use a lot of AI. When that breaks, you know who to call. The ones who can fix it. So maybe it's good that they are becoming less capable of solving their own problems so that we have a job. That's not a very healthy way to look at this, is it? And I think we'll probably find that middle ground eventually in finding that happen, but I think that's one of those cases. So not really the case. Some folks in the chat have brought up some of the other big stories of the day, which is AI adjacent, which is Micron has decided to drop their brand, Crucial. For those of you familiar with the Crucial memory, it is a brand that is owned by Micron, who's been around the industry forever. Micron is a memory manufacturer, primarily focused on memory motherboards and a lot of RAM. And what they're finding, this is sort of the downside to AI for those of us that are in the consumer market, is that so many organizations are investing so much money and technology into AI that we're running out of silicon. We're running out of memory. And as you've seen, the memory prices have more than doubled in the last, 2 months? That's a huge increase. We're running out of RAM. We can't make it fast enough. And because of that, and it's really AI that tends to be driving that for most of these scenarios. And because of that, they've decided to get out of the consumer market. The enterprise market tends to pay more. They tend to need more product, so the transactions are much bigger, and they tend to need higher end products, so the transactions are much more revenue. So they made a business decision and said, why don't we stop selling single memory sticks to people and we start selling 100 sticks at a time to the enterprise? And since we have no more memory available, I'm going to sell it to the people that pay more rather than the people that pay less. I'm going to sell it the systems that are more efficient rather than the ones that are low numbers of transactions, low quantities in the single transaction. So that's the case. Is we just don't have any. People in the chat are talking about the RAM market being oversaturated. That's not happening, brother. We aren't even close to oversaturated at this point. There is no oversaturation. There's no RAM. There's no memory. We don't have any. Or is somebody just keeping it in a vault somewhere, waiting for the right time? Maybe that's it. Someone's cornered the market. Maybe that's what's going on. We don't know. I really don't think it's quite that way. I think people are spending money in the enterprise, and they're spending a lot of money right now on AI, for better or for worse. Maybe they'll figure it out. I keep waiting for somebody to show up with that feature, that product, that thing that proves that, aha, AI is so much better than anything we could ever do. I haven't seen that yet. And that's pretty telling to me. I guess it makes pretty pictures for your slides. There you go. Who said AI wasn't good? I'm glad we're spending all that money on it, so it makes a pretty picture for me. Not really. I don't think that's what we wanted to do with it. We'll have to see. We'll have to find out with this. Some people are saying, I wonder if CompTIA is going to include AI in the next iteration of A+. They are not. It's in the current iteration of A+. You haven't gotten to the last video yet. So get through the last video of the series because AI is already in the A+. Now, anything that's not big data doesn't really seem to fit AI. Now, there are things with big data where AI makes awesome sense. You know, if you're trying to you're trying to cure cancer. I mean, there's more data there than a human could ever go through. That's why we built computers. For trying to for security, you bring it back to technology for the folks that are working in cybersecurity. The number of log files that you will gather from your systems in an hour are overwhelming. There's so much data that we bring in logs on the security side that we simply don't have the tools as humans to be able to sift through and be able to correlate. You know, we didn't used to call this AI. We just used to call it correlation. We would create an application that could go through the data, correlate it all together, and provide us with places where we're starting to see that here's something that happened that very commonly ends up in a breach, or here's something that happens that very commonly ends up in a policy violation. We already had that. Now we have exactly the same tools, except we call it AI. Not sure that's what AI is. Not sure that just naming it something different turns it into AI, but that's where we are. The marketing wins every time. So we'll call it AI, and we all know what it is, kind of thing. It is A. There's not a lot of I there, but it's just A. We have lots of A. We've been using A for quite some time. We will continue to use A for a long time, but the results that we are getting for things at the consumer level hasn't really hit quite well for us, including for preparing yourself for an IT certification exam. It's a horrible way to prepare yourself for an IT certification exam. It is inaccurate, and it doesn't help you very much. Does it give you something? Yeah, it does. It gives you the feel that you're learning something. It gives you in fact, it's confidently incorrect a lot of times. Makes you feel like what the AI is telling you is right. No, that's not right at all. Didn't really work there. So you can't trust it enough to rely on it for something as important as an exam. But it does at least help you with your grammar, sort of, maybe. There you go. That's good, right? That's worth billions of dollars. Or we could just learn about grammar. That might be something we could consider. We don't know where this is going. We don't know how it will end up. We don't know whether it's something that we're all right about it or we're all wrong about it. We'll have to see where it goes from there. There are places where it fits perfectly. There are places where it sort of fits. but there's places where it really doesn't work at all. And I think we all want it to be everything for everybody, but I don't think it's going to be that type of technology. I think it's going to be a very specific niche technology for a number of people, and then parts of it we can use in other parts of our life. But it's not something that really helps very much in the world of IT training. We aren't quite there yet with what we can expect. Certainly not as good as, nowhere even close to being as good as a human yet. So like we always say, garbage in, garbage out. And so far, that's what we've got with AI. But maybe we'll get there. Maybe we'll improve on it as the years go by. Who knows? We will figure it out. We'll keep watching it. We'll see if it starts to improve, or if it's one of those things where we just decide not really the right use of that particular application. One of those scenarios. Well, you've heard me talk now for well over an hour in the after show, which quite honestly is more than anyone should ever have to deal with. So I think it's probably a great place to start. I think it's been kind of fun, though. We had some great questions in the first hour. You had some fantastic questions for me in the second hour. We deviated quite a bit away from the technology side this time through, but maybe it all changes now when we start looking at dealing with Core 2, because 2 days from now, on the 11th, I'm going to do our Core 2 study group. I've already written the questions. They're already ready to go. All we need is you. So put it on your calendar on Thursday, 2 days from now, 12 noon Eastern time, same time as this one. We're doing another study group. It's the A+ study group, but for Core 2, I've got some really interesting questions for you on this one. It's our last Core 2 study group of the year. We'd love for you to join us. You can come back Thursday and we have a good time with that. Thank you for being here on this study group. We always have a good time with you. We could not do it without you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for your support of the products on our website. It has been an amazing 2025. We look forward to what's coming in 2026. Thanks for being here. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.